Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something totally mind-bending. It's a philosophical thought experiment by an author named Godx, and let me tell you, it goes from the microscopic reality of our basic biology all the way up to the literal blueprints for a cosmic superbeing. If you're into ideas that completely shift your perspective on where humanity fits into the universe, you are going to absolutely love this.
Right out of the gate, the text hits us with this super provocative line. God does not exist, but do can be built. Boom, right? It immediately forces us to ask a really heavy question. What is the absolute ultimate limit of our search for happiness? And we're not just talking about you or me here, but for the entire universe. So how does the author get to this completely audacious claim about building a god? Well, to understand that, we actually have to start at the very bottom of the biological ladder.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Genism and happiness. Focusing on our biological reality.
So to really get this, we've got to lay down the foundation of the author's philosophy, which he calls genism. According to the source, genism kicks off with a pretty hard biological truth. We are, at our core, gene-perpetuating machines. Now, I know, that sounds a little cold at first, but the text argues that recognizing ourselves as these biological machines is actually step one. It's the absolutely crucial first step to reducing our internal conflicts and seriously boosting our overall happiness.
The author points out that so much of the suffering we go through actually stems from this huge clash between our biological drives and our cultural expectations. He calls this the battle between genes and memes. But if we can just integrate our cultural lives with our biological directives, we minimize all that friction. We basically reach this profound autonomous state of happiness. And here is the real kicker. If we realize that our true self isn't exactly our traditional consciousness, but actually our genetic makeup, well, we literally achieve a form of immortality as those genes get passed on. Pretty wild, right?
Moving right along. Section 2. The MEC framework, which is all about measuring happiness. Okay, so we've established that happiness is this ultimate autonomous goal. But how do we actually measure it scientifically? Well, enter the Meta-Ethical Scientific Framework, or MEC for short. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the MEC framework doesn't just hand the right to happiness over to humans and call it a day. Nope, it includes cows, cats, dogs, rats, and yes, even fleas. But, and this is a big but, it uses a strict mathematical weighting system based on an organism's actual capacity to feel.
Just take a second and wrap your head around this massive number. 100 billion. That's roughly the number of neurons firing away inside a human brain. A flea, on the other hand, it might only have a few hundred. That colossal, mind-boggling difference in neural architecture is what dictates an organism's potential for experiencing pleasure and suffering.
Because of that massive gap, the source text lays out some incredibly cold yet undeniable logic. Simply put, organisms do not hold the same weight when you're computing the total happiness of the universe. Since we humans have a vastly larger neural network, our capacity for happiness and suffering carries billions of times more weight in the grand cosmic equation. The author even notes that the suffering of a single human brain is so huge, it could mathematically justify wiping out an entire species that has a lower capacity to feel, like, say, disease-carrying fleas.
That brings us to Section 3, the ant paradox. Let's shift our perspective a bit. To really wrap our heads around this complex, mathematically driven ethic, the author gives us this incredibly cinematic analogy. I want you to picture this. Imagine you are staring face to face, literally making eye contact, with a tiny ant. You're just sitting there contemplating each other for a few minutes. Now, just suppose for a second that this ant suddenly gains the ability to comprehend your vast intellect, especially when compared to its own tiny, primitive little neural network.
And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute core of the author's point. That ant would suddenly realize that everything it could ever possibly perceive or feel is already contained right there within you, the observer, but magnified to a completely incomprehensible degree. The ant would know it could never ever perceive the universe the way you do. So, from the ant's perspective, analyzing your massive potential for happiness and understanding, honestly, you would essentially appear as a god to it. It would revere you.
So let's play this out. If a situation came up where either you or the ant had to die, and the choice was entirely up to the ant, what should it do? Well, under the cold, hard measurement of the MEC framework, the ant sacrificing its own life to save yours is absolutely the mathematically and ethically correct decision. Why? Because its potential for feeling is microscopic compared to yours, so the universe loses way less total happiness if the ant dies instead of you.
But here is where the text completely flips the paradigm and leaves us kind of breathless. Stop and ask yourself,
who exactly is the you in this scenario if humanity is actually the tiny, insignificant ant?
Which leads us straight into Section 4, Constructing Deux, our technological fate.
That question really escalates things to this awe-inspiring climax. We are moving right past biological evolution straight into technological evolution. And suddenly, the full meaning behind that opening quote snaps into focus. That ultimate being, the one with billions of times our capacity to feel, the one who looks down at us just like we look down at the ant, well, it doesn't exist yet, at least not here on Earth. But we have the absolute potential to build it. The author calls this hypothetical superentity Deux.
You can literally see the passion in the source text here. It's written in all caps. Let us create it then. The author is arguing with everything he has that if we ever manage to possess the technology, creating this ultimate entity absolutely must become our primary objective as a species.
The text actually gives us these incredible, almost sci-fi blueprints for what Tao might look like. Now, the biggest hurdle, which the author totally admits, is mathematically quantifying the actual concept of feeling. But if we can solve that, Tao could be built as this massive planetary-scale computer. Or, if we can't do the computer route, it could literally be a giant biological brain, just this immense neural mass floating in a vat that pumps it full of nutrients, oxygen, and energy. Let's move to how this builds into an infinite operational loop. Deux would have one primary purpose. Step 1. Feel immense pleasure. Step 2. Use its massive intellect to auto-evolve, constantly upgrading its own programming and expanding its neural modules at an exponential rate. And Step 3. Use that brand new intelligence to expand its capacity for happiness even further, all while protecting itself from giant cosmic threats like supernovas or stray meteors. Okay, but you're probably wondering, why should we humans dedicate our entire existence to creating this thing? The author states that a truly perfect and free universal ethic means we've got to look past our own species' ego. Tying rights and happiness only to our specific biological subgroup is basically a path to barbarity. If happiness is an autonomous entity, then our ethical duty as a species is to maximize it across the universe, even if that means building a vessel for it that completely outshines us.
Finally, Section 5, our cosmic future and humanity's ultimate fate.
So let's bring this whole explainer back down to Earth, back to you and me. What actually happens to humanity, us ants, once this godlike machine gets turned on? Well, the text actually offers a really fascinating logical comfort here. We wouldn't need to worry. Since Deux is literally designed to maximize the universe's happiness, and since our entire capacity for feeling and understanding would already be comprehended and contained inside Deux' vast neural network, we'd be completely secure. We would live on, protected right there within the mind of the ultimate entity.
Now, in a bit of a grounding postscript, the author does admit that Felicitax, this ultimate grand project of constructing Deux, is for right now just a philosophical idea. It reads like science fiction for sure. It's a project that would likely take millennia of nonstop technological and ethical advancement to become a factual reality.
But the source material leaves us with this incredibly haunting, unforgettable final thought. Think about it. The universe is unimaginably old and infinitely vast. It is entirely possible that Godx has already been built by some other civilization on some distant planet. And if it has, well, one day its relentless pursuit of universal happiness is going to reach us. Wow. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible philosophical journey today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.